from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Feel free to chime in online if you like. If not, give us a call, 833-482-5337-833-4-VALDEZ, and welcome to the Friday night edition. This is where we let our hair down, and we get into all sorts of things tonight. We've got a few things going on. Netanyahu's firing back against the Biden administration after a visit from Secretary of State Blinken. This is interesting because he's been very complimentary, I think. Netanyahu learned that he has to take Hamas at its word. This is on hot air, by the way. Hamas is at its word because the United States, I don't understand this thing I'm reading here. The United States, and specifically Anthony Blinken and Joe Biden, still have not, as Blinken has met with the unity government in Jerusalem to push Israel to pause operations for aid flow into northern Gaza. Netanyahu delivered a rather humiliating public rebuke. All right, I won't read those sentences again. But listen to this. Check it out. It's coming our way in a moment. Forgive us. It's when we let our hair down on Fridays. Sometimes it's not ready on time. Go for it.
We need to substantially and immediately increase the sustained flow of humanitarian assistance into Gaza and getting American citizens and other foreign nationals out of Gaza. Since we reached agreement with Israel, Egypt, and the United Nations 2 weeks ago on mechanisms to enable humanitarian aid to begin reaching civilians in need, we have scaled up deliveries. We've gone from 0 to now over 100 trucks going into Gaza through the Rafah crossing every day. But this is still not enough. I spoke to Israeli leaders about tangible steps that can be taken to increase the sustained delivery of food, water, medicine, fuel, and other essential needs, while putting in place measures to prevent diversion by Hamas and other terrorist groups. We've identified mechanisms to enable fuel to reach hospitals and other needs in the south. Israel has raised appropriate concerns that we share, about Hamas's hoarding and siphoning of fuel in northern Gaza. Again, its cynicism knows no bounds, denying fuel itself that it has to hospitals and other places that desperately need it.
So that's Anthony Blinken today saying, look, hey, here we're taking our victory lap, patting ourselves on the back, being careful not to break our arm while doing it, saying we have to stop the war. We have to stop everything. Because, listen, you guys have your problems. I know your people were attacked by these terrorists, but you can't hit them back right now because we've got to get your enemies the supplies that they need to live. Now, listen, I know that I probably sound harsh, but I don't think we've done this in anything. I mean, I'm sure there's some examples, in the middle of fighting. We, you send in some medics and things like that. I do get that. But the idea of a ceasefire and in the middle of, I don't know, what's this? Monday they started with their incursion on the ground, or maybe over the weekend. You've got to be crazy. I mean, again, conventional wisdom tells me this. If you have a dog, right? I've had pit bulls most of my life. Your dog gets into a fight. You want to try and take your dog off, but you run the risk of getting bitten by the dog, right? They're not going to stop fighting just because you're saying to stop. So when you have a country that was just attacked by these terrorists and they're going after them, door by door on the ground, trying to make sure they don't kill innocent people in the process, which has been the big complaint of everybody. It's like, look, we know they're terrorists. It's very bad what they've done, but there's blame on both sides and blah, blah, blah. And we just keep hearing the same old song. I don't know. I think Biden is out of his mind. I typically do. I'm really frustrated with this because you got to, we're here to support Israel, anything they need, except we're going to get in the way. I got hairy legs. No, it's not a joke, man. And, he's going to go there. Now we're bringing all this aid and supplies. There's other ways to do this. He could have called his friends in other places in Jordan and in Egypt and said, hey, listen, we're going to have to come through the back door. We're going to deliver them over here. It's up to Hamas to get them where they got to go, blah, blah, blah. This is clearly Biden interfering. while saying one thing and doing another. I think this is a stupid move from Biden. I'm glad Netanyahu's blasting him. I think he's a real gentleman. Honestly, I do. He's a real statesman when it comes to this stuff. I would have, I guess it's a risky political game for him to say, hey, Biden, go F yourself, Don't come here, the way everybody else in that region dissed him when he went there to visit. But I think that it's a bad move. And, when I hear about the people coming in to the country or the aid coming in, I'm thinking, is Biden smuggling in new terrorists for them? You never know what's going on with these people. Well, in fact, the New York Post is now claiming that Hamas is trying to smuggle out the wounded terrorists along with civilians to get them medical care. So another reason for Biden to pull this little sleight of hand no, we're bringing in aid. We need a ceasefire. Listen to this quick little bit from the New York Post. A quite extraordinary statement from senior Biden official during a call with reporters this evening, possibly explaining the slow pace of getting foreign nationals out of the Gaza Strip. Hamas was not allowing anybody to leave. And then they said that they would they would allow foreign nationals to leave, subject to a number of wounded Palestinians being allowed to leave as well, which of course is not objectionable. If there are people that need aid, they need aid. Sure, I get that. But the list that was provided, once it was vetted, about a third of the wounded Palestinians on the list were members of Hamas. And the Biden official, who is being on the condition of anonymity here, is saying that this is subterfuge and it's unacceptable. I agree with that. Biden not only interferes in elections, he interfered in an election in Israel when he was vice president. There's obviously the interference that we see here right now, where he's going after his own political opponent with everybody in his government and going after Trump on the most bogus of charges, things that are outdated, things that could have been brought a long time ago, but they waited till now to do it just in time for Election Day. And here we have this. Hold on, it's a ceasefire. I've got hairy legs. Joe El Baboso Biden wants to send in aid, telling Netanyahu, hold your horses. We got to get these people some stuff. And, I think the most brilliant thing I've heard on this whole war was someone who lived close to the border and said, Israel left whatever year that was. I'm going to say, was it 2015 that Israel left? Or 2005. Can you check that for me, Alexander Hinton? The year Israel left and handed over Gaza to Hamas. But whatever the case is, I'm drawing a blank on the year. The point is, in all of these years, they're still 2005. And they're still saying, because they shut off our water, they shut off our power, they shut off. Why on earth are they not getting power from Hamas? Why are they not getting water from Hamas? Why isn't Hamas taking care of their people? They've been there forever, and they've had literally one election, and that was it. It's like President Xi, president for life, one election, and you're in forever. And then they want to talk crap about Trump, saying, he'll never leave, he'll never leave. Unbelievable. The things that people, the double standards that people create are just ridiculous. And Biden should be absolutely ashamed of himself. But the problem with Biden is he's what my mother would call un sinvergüenza, someone with no shame. He can't be ashamed of himself. He's incapable of it because he possesses no shame. Anyway, we're going to get into a bunch of things tonight. I don't want you to move a muscle. I am Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Tell me who the guest is. And we're going to continue our conversation tonight with one of my good buddies, a gentleman by the name of Bruce LeVell, longtime advisor and appointee to President Donald J. Trump, the 45th president of the United States. He was on board back in 2015 when Trump was running in 2016 for that campaign, and in 2020, and he's still rocking with the president. Bruce LeVell, welcome, sir.
Hey, happy Friday. Thanks, Rich. Thanks for having me.
You bet, brother. Happy to have you. I'm going to dig into a few different things. I know we chatted on the phone a couple of weeks ago, and there was a few things that I wanted to talk about with you. You'd mentioned a piece that you'd written, and I want to get into that. I also want to get your take on a couple of things. We were just talking about this ceasefire, into the war. That Biden's called for a ceasefire to bring in some aid and whatnot into Gaza. And Blinken thinks this is the best thing ever. Netanyahu's blasting him back, saying you're crazy. The New York Post was in a roundtable with a Biden official who said that they're trying to smuggle out wounded Hamas terrorists with the alleged citizens that they're releasing from Gaza. And it's just a free-for-all that's going on. What's your take on all that?
Yeah, well, thanks. Well, I'm business-wise, I'm tied to a lot of business colleagues in Tel Aviv, of course, for the last 30 years. So I have a lot of friends and, like I said, business colleagues who are there. I do get daily, should I say, updates on the state of what's going on, just with friends and business people. Sure. And, I understand, a lot about the culture, but I also understand Netanyahu, his willingness to finally seek out and hunt down and try to put an end to this. And I think for, Biden to, whatever he's trying to run, being that he's so compromised with China, God knows everyone else, who knows, it runs deep with that administration, unfortunately. So I think, I'd have to side with the Israelis, like, this has been going on. They shoot missiles, they shoot, it's constant. And to say, hey, y'all need to stop. And, for them not to defend themselves, Israel has the right, to defend themselves, and so, it's their situation. It seems like they're doing just fine. We're not immersed in their battle per se. We have intel, et cetera, as an ally, but for him to defend his country by any means necessary, I think that they have every right.
100%. I'm with you, and I just can't believe that Blinken is making a visit over there, and Biden's there saying we need a ceasefire. Did Biden ever call for a ceasefire with Vladimir Putin?
No, he didn't. Ironically, he never even called to even just say, hey, let's all meet and just work this out, which I think that's really bizarre. And that was totally perplexed, even though knowing his compromised family with Ukraine as well as Russia, I would think like, look, you're on the take with both sides of the fence. So
don't kill each other, guys. Keep the money coming.
Yeah, let's meet and let's at least talk this over. And he never called for that to say, hey, let's all meet in Singapore or whatever, a neutral state, country or somewhere, and which is bizarre in itself. So I don't see any real leadership coming out of the Biden administration except to fuel and to instigate more war.
Yeah. Now, there's the piece that you wrote in the Washington Times, right? I want to dig into that because it was really interesting what you were telling me about and the way you were drawing the parallels between what's going on now and what happened in the past. Tell us a little bit about it. Walk us through.
Which one? I've read so many.
The one in the Washington
Times.
Rich. The recent one in the Washington Times, you were drawing parallels to the protests of George Floyd and juxtaposing them to what we're seeing today.
As it relates to Fannie Willis, that one, and how how lopsided
Funny Willis.
Yeah. Well,
and let me just add, Bruce LeVell is from Georgia, so he knows Georgia politics, and of course, there's this trial going on to kick Trump off the ballot in Minnesota, And you've got Funny Willis that's going after him, trying to put him in jail on RICO charges, and has already found a number of people guilty, like Jenna Ellis and others that have agreed to plead out. And it's just fascinating to see how they're doing this, because, again, to the innocent bystander that's just watching this, they're going, well, I mean, the Trump people are all guilty. I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire, right? That's what people are going to think, Bruce LeVell.
Yeah. Well, just for the listeners, as it relates to Georgia and Jenna Ellis and two of the other folks that played out, what happened was they were involved with a county election officer who was giving them access to, showing them, the machine and the access to the facility, which is, quote, against the law. That is what they got pled to. It wasn't any other thing outside of some big grandiose conspiracy to overturn. It was the fact that they were at a particular county and they were involved in, looking at material which is illegal. And I just say it like that. So just for that case, a lot of people think like, oh gosh, they're all pleading out. It's all really a nothing burger. And
right.
Where I'm going with that as it relates to Funny Willis, and I can take it. And there's two types of things that I wrote on that. One is recruiting woke warriors. That's a piece I wrote months back, and how the far left takes money and they go after, especially black women and some black men, and as it relates to the DA's office, and they say, hey, we'll support millions of dollars behind you. We'll get you elected. But Letitia James, you got to get Trump. But Fonnie Willis, you got to get Trump. But Alvin Bragg, you got to get Trump. And they have been very strategic as it relates to around Oakland, Los Angeles, Chicago, Washington, D.C., many large urban cities across the country, where they get this huge funding machine, Soros style. Not everything is on Soros, but there are many people like Soros. I can't give him all the credit, but a lot of the credit I can.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of people who don't have quote, his popular name, who fund these particular district attorneys. And I'll tell you, when you're talking about raising money for a district attorney, if you raise $100,000, you are golden. It's so hard to raise money for district attorneys, state house seats, state senate, congressional seats, Senate seats, gubernatorial seats are the ones that you raise, a lot of money. But those aren't, as you call them, very popular or have a lot of flash to them, if you want to say that. So for a district attorney to get millions of dollars in their coffer, for example, Fonnie Willis, 92% of her fundraising comes from 44 states outside of Georgia. That means only 8% of the funding that she gets comes locally. So that tells you the culture of just the Fulton residents and the Georgia residents as it relates to what they believe in giving her money. So the outside entities weaponize these people, these DAs like Fonnie Willis, Letitia James, and they get behind them with the big money machine. But you owe us this and this and this to go after Trump. And so, yeah, it's fascinating.
Bruce, hold that thought right there. The music means we got to go, and we're going to come right back. Folks, we're on with Bruce LeVell. He's a longtime businessman, longtime advisor to President Donald Trump, and he's a Georgian, and he's breaking it down for us, Georgia style. Don't move a muscle. Keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdez, America at Night. Our guest, Bruce LeVell. Don't go anywhere.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations, everybody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We're on with Bruce LeVell. And Bruce LeVell is a longtime advisor to President Trump. He was describing the sordid way that funding is created for campaigns for district attorneys like Fonnie Willis from Georgia who's trying to make a name for herself and go after Trump. You also got Alvin Bragg, and then you got federal attorneys or U.S. attorneys like Jack Smith, who Trump often I can't speak today, who often refers to him as deranged Jack Smith. Bruce LeVell, let's pick up where we left off with the funding for Funny Willis.
Yeah. So anyway, like I was saying, the money that the 92% of that money coming from out of state, and the weaponization of how they're using those tactics across the country. Also with Funny, I wrote another op-ed for the Washington Times in late September. It was called "The Fall of Fulton County" through Funny Willis. And for example, with her stripping and robbing all the resources from Fulton County, which is 1 million residents, which I reside in, the other cases are being neglected. There are over 500 cases that are still waiting to be heard. That therefore, she's only brought 66 from January to this day, 66 cases on criminal cases because of the resources that have been stripped away only for this Trump witch hunt. And so you can imagine, for example, in Patrick Labatt's jail, they had inmates dying in there and people in there with really small charges waiting to be heard. It's been sitting in there over a year and a half. So it's such a dire situation, especially in Fulton County, where the legislators have already voted to go into an oversight, and the DOJ is about to, if not take over, go back into that jail again. I think the last time they did that was 2010. So there's always some drama and chaos, unfortunately, going on in Fulton County. But with Funny taking those resources once again and going after Trump through a political witch hunt, it's literally starving and stripping away the precious resources of the taxpayers here in Fulton County. And this is not the only state that's going through that. So, I'm very optimistic about where this is going to land. The president called Brad Ratzenberger and questioned the election after the election and asked him, come on, Brad, I know I had more votes. Where are the votes? Go back and look. There was no quid pro quo. There was no threat. There was no, I'll give you money if you find that. It was challenging the election. Meanwhile, Stacey Abrams and Hillary Clinton went on a campaign of saying Trump was a legitimate president and, quote, Trump stole the election. And then Stacey went on the same campaign and started a super PAC and said that Brian Kemp stole the election. They stole their moving, trying to come after black people. They don't want you to vote, and they stole it. And that was 2 years, and there's so much video of her out there. It's just unreal of her claiming the election was stolen. So you see the hypocrisy in it. So where's their indictments for questioning the election? Right. So it's really sad, Rich, because, it's like Rudy. I talk to Rudy all the time, Rudy Giuliani, and he got indicted too. And, when he was on the courthouse steps in the press conference, he says, this pendulum swings. And he was warning even folks on the left side, look, if you sit back and just, this could be you. And of course, I went deeper and says, it's kind of like me looking out the window, Rich, and I'm seeing someone break in your house and steal and rob, and I do nothing except just watch it happen. And that's exactly what's happening right here. And I've warned all the, whether you like President Trump or not, right is right, wrong is wrong, because this pendulum, as Rudy said, can swing back. So it's imperative that we as a republic call it out for what it is. And it is wrong because, like I said, it could be you, it could be your cousin, your brother, or whatever. And we have to stand in the way of these judicial systems weaponizing these DA offices, et cetera, and these judges because they want to stop and they have a political agenda to stop another political candidate because they don't want them or don't agree with them. Very dangerous.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It's very dangerous. And what's interesting, you brought up Stacey Abrams, you brought up Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton's, a 3-time loser. You got Stacey Abrams, a 2-time loser. And all they do is complain about how the election was stolen. Nothing happens to them. They're never, nobody says they're inciting riots. They're inciting problems. They're destroying the fabric of democracy, yada, yada, yada. Everything you hear about Trump. Yet Trump actually won an election, right? He was actually president. Neither of them got to where they wanted to be. And I just find that remarkable. And Stacey Abrams was on MSNBC yesterday saying that now defending Biden, defending the economy even, saying that people's lives are harder right now, but it's not because of Biden. And she was on with Jen Psaki. I want you to hear this quick clip. Listen to this.
Are you satisfied with the job he's done as president, what he's delivered on?
I think President Joe Biden has been an exceptional president. On a range of issues, he has overperformed expectation. He has navigated incredibly difficult circumstances. And he has shown that he is willing to stand with the people of Georgia, with the people of this country, to move the nation forward. We have to remember what we face if we want to continue to hold on the progress we've had. But we can't ignore the fact that people's lives are harder. And this is not because of the president. It is because of global issues and international challenges and market conditions and a whole host of things that don't matter to you when you're sitting at your kitchen table.
So because of, global issues, this, that, and the third, the same global issues that existed when Trump was president, we have to give Biden a pass on the reason that, if you're somebody that makes $100,000 a year, you feel like you're making 40 because inflation is crushing you and your family and the rest of Americans. And if you make $60,000 a year or $40,000 a year, imagine how you feel then. None of that has to do with Joe Biden. But yet these same people were alive and benefiting from the economy while Trump was president. What do you think of what Stacey Abrams and Jen Psaki are selling to the people here?
Yeah, honestly, Rich, I'm just shocked that anyone even wastes their time and put Stacey on any show or anything, giving her any level of clout. I'm just blown away that in itself. Listen, obviously she's trying to carry the water pail. I don't know what her political ambitions are. The first thing Biden did was he cut the Keystone Pipeline, sent thousands and thousands of workers unemployed, took the bread off their table. And many, Rich, were minorities and black pipe fitters that lost their jobs. We were oil independents. We were 2.5% to 3% on interest rates of loans. We had low gas prices. We had consumer confidence at the highest. We had the Trump tax cut that incentivized small businesses, which make up 62% of the GDP of 30 plus million small businesses, as myself, to lower the FICA, to have more money in your employee's paycheck where they can go out and spend more and have more discretionary income. He cut billions and billions of dollars of crazy regulations that were special interest and lobby, funded. So the list goes on. And so for Stacey to sit up there and call something global, you remember when President Trump was in office, first of all, none of this would have happened. And I'll tell you this, Rich, I was with the president last week. I speak to him regularly. I know we'll get back in the White House. There's no doubt in my heart. What I'm praying for is someone after he comes out in 2028 that's going to carry the same similar policies and keep us successful and keep America first agenda on the forefront. That's what my prayers were, because you see how effective the Trump administration was, what we did. He always used the term we for 4 years, but you see how fast and devastating it can be destroyed with the wrong person in office, and that's before our very eyes. So that's what my prayer is, outside of, yes, putting President Trump back in the Oval Office, but someone who's going to come after him for that next 28, and 32, 36, that's what my prayer is, on and above with that. So, but we just got to remain optimistic, and obviously too, and all the listeners is, keep the prayers going, for the Middle East. It's a powder keg over there. The situation with the neighboring countries, Egypt, Yemen. You saw what's going on with there. You see Jordan next to them. You basically see a small state or country surrounded by other countries that would want them wiped off the face of the earth. So it's a very tough time right now. We have a commander in chief who's compromised. Comer is just said today that he's going to release, put the subpoenas out on the Bidens.
Well, I want to dig into that
think.
with you about some domestic stuff and some Biden stuff. I'm going to take a quick pause right here, Bruce LeVell. Folks, we're on with Bruce LeVell. He is a businessman and longtime advisor to President Trump. He was head of the National Diversity Coalition for Trump. And we're going to jump into some domestic policy issues. And, of course, your calls are welcome to 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We're on with Bruce LeVell. Bruce LeVell, longtime advisor to President Trump, who I met through the National Diversity Coalition for President Trump. And I want to talk about this Biden corruption stuff and some domestic stuff. I also want to get your take on Rick Scott endorsing Trump. I don't know if that was a big shock to me, but for some it was. Being that he's a Florida guy and they thought he'd go with DeSantis, and he ends up going with Trump. But I feel like at this point, as great as a guy as DeSantis is, it's kind of hard to go with him because it's A, a long shot, and B, you want to be with the guy that's going to win the nomination. And it seems clear that Trump is on track for, I don't know, since last October or November when he announced, he's on track to cinch the nomination. Bruce LeVell.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Floridian too, so I have another house there. And so, I knew this was going to happen, but it tells you a lot about, obviously DeSantis had a really popular election. And Rich, and I'll just put it to you like this. I remember when this was going down, when DeSantis was really begging for President Trump's endorsement. And, President Trump didn't even know him. And so, and Andrew Gilliam's defense, Andrew Gilliam was very popular, mayor out of Tallahassee, very charismatic, man. He's a hard guy to beat. And it was President Trump that went there and endorsed him and pulled him over the finish line. And so with that being said, it's kind of like, hey, it's kind of like, it's like one of my old mentors taught me. He's like, whoever takes you to the dance that night, make sure you go home with them. And it's and I think, over time, he did mimic a lot of things from President Trump. I mean, he really, truly did, and which made him very, and a lot of folks did too. It wasn't so much trying to just the mannerism aspect, but just some really good policy ideas that they implemented that President Trump was doing. And that's okay. That's what we want. We want to sell our ideas, great ideas, to our governors, our commissioners, our state house.
I'd love to have 1,000 Trumps. Imagine how great we'd be doing with 1,000 Trumps.
Yeah, I like the policies. I like the transparency. I like the double downing and owning up to it and calling it out and being very authentic and transparent with the public. I really love that. And there's some good candidates out there like that, elected officials. And so, with that being said, he for example, he just, it's just one of those things, man. You get drunk on that Kool-Aid, and the worst thing you can do is get a bunch of politicals around you and special interests and super PACs telling you how great you are and how much money they're going to give you, and selling the idea that he's going to be indicted anyway, pushed off the ballot. You need to stay in and all that. But realistically, they're not being truthful. And so he fell for the banana in the tailpipe, and now he's at 11%. Nikki's way ahead, if not tied with him in South Carolina, if not, probably going to gain ahead of him. And so now he's attacking her, and it's not a good thing. And to the answer to your question on Rick Scott, as well as Byron Donalds, Corey Mills, very popular Congress folks out in Florida,
those
as well
guys
as senators.
They weren't on the fence, right? I think Mills and Donalds were always on Trump.
Yeah, they were early on, but I can tell you where it came from, and there's many more coming out. There's a popular state rep. Several state reps have joined President Trump. Is the fact that they're like, they were trying to, and I understand it, because I know the chairman in Florida, Christian Ziegler. I know a lot of folks in Florida, and they're trying to, like, all right, Governor, DeSantis, we're here. We're trying to work with you. We're trying to live with you, but come on, man. And so now they're at a point now, look, and Byron, I know Byron very well. He says, he just wasn't real, talkative to me. He never really wanted to engage or do anything or whatever. So, there was a lot of unfortunate
access issues,
coldness. Yeah, that came out with that. And
that
like,
might be
fine.
his team. I've talked to DeSantis a few times. A really nice guy.
Yeah.
But I know we've reached out a couple of times to invite him on. We invited all of the presidential candidates on, and most of them came on. But his team never really wanted to come on. And when one big Florida story happened, when that hurricane hit, we invited him on. He didn't want to come on, but we got Jeanette Nunes, the lieutenant governor, very charming. Love to have her. And we had a great conversation. But I just found it odd. This is the largest show in syndicated late night talk radio in our time slot. And I was just, like, why not get in front of this audience of close to 6 million people and make your case, when you have a chance to. And you didn't take the chance. And I think that hurt him. Not just me. I'm just saying that attitude, like you're talking about, saying like Byron Donalds and everybody saying that they can't get to the guy. I think that's not a great place to be. Bruce, can you stick with me for just a couple more minutes so that we can wrap up and take one more pause? All right, folks, we're on with Bruce LeVell, longtime advisor to President Trump. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We're on with Bruce LeVell, and he's a longtime advisor to President Trump, worked on both campaigns, and has been a surrogate on TV with him for a number of years. Bruce LeVell, I want everybody to know how they could find you. And by the way, we got a caller. We won't have time to get to you, but Steve in Atlanta on WGKA, he says he would like to back Bruce LeVell for Secretary of State. So just know that, Bruce LeVell, you already got fans out there that want you to run for secretary or to be chosen as Secretary of State. Bruce LeVell, let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with all the great work you're doing.
Yeah, thanks. I stay active on X, Twitter, Bruce_LeVell. And of course, Bruce LeVell at Truth Social. And I'm on Getter, and I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram, on everything out there. I do a lot of hits on Newsmax, and like Rich said, of many media outlets, radio, et cetera. My title is the President's OG. And to that caller, the president always asks me, when you're going to run, I said, well, I have to get you back in first, quote.
Uh-huh.
And so that's pinned on my Twitter account, that him actually asking me in a public forum. So, I just tell all the listeners to, like Rick Scott said, we're going to unite behind President Trump. He's polling 53, 60% in certain places. And, the country went through an unfortunate shutdown. It wasn't a fair election. We were bombarded with mail-in ballots, which was totally unfair. And they outmaneuvered us. And so this time we're going to be better this time.
Sounds good to me. Bruce LeVell, I didn't know that you were in Florida, too. I was in Palm Beach this week. Next time I'm in town, hopefully we can connect, or when you're in New York, we can connect. Folks, Bruce LeVell, give him a follow. Check him out. Bruce, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. And I want to thank you for staying up late with us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Rich.
You bet. More to come straight ahead. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, Here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And, of course, we're talking about all the big headlines of the day. Netanyahu rebuked the Biden administration after Secretary of State Blinken went in and said, hey, listen, I know you guys are trying to defend your country, but hold on. We need a ceasefire. We got to bring some supplies in. And that wasn't very welcome news, and Netanyahu made it very clear that he wasn't happy about it. Then in the trial against Donald Trump in the classified documents case, Judge Callahan has agreed to delay the Department of Justice trial. So we'll get into that a little bit later. Hezbollah leader is now saying that fighting on the Israel border could turn into all-out war. I thought it was an all-out war. They went in there and they burned small children. These people are nuts. And that's their first public comment since the Israel-Hamas war began. Although they did have that one spokesman that was asked about burning small children. And of course, right, that's true. Hezbollah is different from Hamas. But you know me, tomato. And he got up and walked away when asked a very difficult question. And there's, of course, 13 Democrat senators now that are requesting a temporary ceasefire in this war as well. And remember that CNN producer John Griffin who sexually assaulted a 9-year-old girl? Well, they've reached a settlement on that lawsuit. So we'll get into that a little bit later as well. But I wanted to talk about some of the division that we see in America, whether it's on this war or anything else. And it's always the case, right? I think that there used to be a time and a place where we celebrated bipartisanship, we celebrated meeting in the middle, and I think what we've learned is that compromise can be useful at times, but there are certain things you can't compromise on. Like, for example, oftentimes I'll bring up the sordid history of these two crazy doctors. Right, the first of which is Dr. Alfred Kinsey, who led research on infants and, in fact, molested these infants, saying that they could derive pleasure from sex and that infants could, in fact, reach orgasm. Not me, him. He said that. And this guy was a sicko. And others that followed in his footsteps, like Dr. Daniel Carlton Gajasek. Now, Gajasek suggested that you're not truly allowing a child to experience the fullness of their childhood if they don't participate in intergenerational sex, meaning sex with their mom, sex with their dad, sex with their uncle, sex with grandpa. Right? He believed that to be a healthy thing for a child. This is a sick bastard. So when you have these people, and I'm making an extreme example for the sake of the argument, you can't compromise. Right? You can't compromise with people that are nuts. And this causes divide. And divide, in my opinion, it can be a good thing, and sometimes it's a bad thing. And you got to take a look at what the issues are. But there's a University of Maryland poll called the Critical Issues Poll, and it shows that of 1,000 people that were polled, you've got 72% of Republicans, specifically on the Israeli war issue, they want the U.S. to lean towards supporting Israel, while 57% of Democrats want the U.S. to lean towards neither side. And this is from October 20th through the 22nd, 2 weeks after the Hamas terrorists attacked Israeli civilians near the Gaza border, killing over 1,400 people and kidnapping hundreds. They're still holding a 9-month-old child as a hostage. So that's just one issue that's currently in the headlines. But they also asked participants in the poll to characterize the position of President Biden. 40% of the poll respondents said they didn't know, while 28% called his position on this about right. 26% of Republicans described Biden's response as too pro-Palestinian, while 25% of Democrats said he was too pro-Israel. So clearly, and that's just one issue that they're polling on, But ultimately, there is a divide in this country, whether it's to have an open border or a secure border, whether it's to have low taxes or Biden's infinite taxes, whether we should cut spending or whether we should bloat the budget and continue to destroy this country's economy by adding more and more and more to our $33 trillion deficit. And you name it, and there's people on both sides of the issue, and the divide widens. It's a chasm right now. And there are issues where we can come together. And this situation is an interesting one. Mason Douglas, he's a singer and a songwriter. He's got a brand new campaign, something called I Miss America. And I want to learn all about it, but I want you to hear a clip of his song. Check this out. That's Mason Douglas, a singer and songwriter, and his song I Miss America. But he's got a whole movement that he's derived as a result of it. And Mason Douglas is here. Mason Douglas, welcome, sir.
Rich, thank you so much for having me. It's such an absolute honor to be talking with you here. This is awesome, Phil. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you, brother. I appreciate you staying up late to chat with us. And I love what you're doing, the fact that you're using your talent to try to bring America together. And I agree. We need to come together. I think the reason we have this big divide we have on many issues is because people are getting, in my opinion, bad information. They're buying into bad thinking, if you will, where they don't look back like you just did in your song saying, I miss the old America. And you know, people hear that and they go, oh, that's a dog whistle. They miss the racist South. They miss Jim Crow. Nobody's talking about that. I don't think you're talking about that. I know I'm not talking about that. We're talking about when things were better, when you talk to your neighbor and you could disagree. One could like the Yankees, the other one could like the Mets, and you could still, you know, say hello to each other and not want to kill each other. And it seems like we've heightened the rhetoric in politics and really in culture to a fever pitch where it's like, hey, why am I the bad guy? Because I want my little boy to be a boy, or because I want my little girl to be a girl. And these issues, there's so many of them, and the issues are there. But I think the important thing is we can disagree agreeably at times, and there's times where we have to disagree vehemently. But we do have to come together as Americans. Tell us about the I Miss America tour, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you hit the nail on the head with so much right there, Rich. The big thing is we're all getting fed this all just the extreme stuff from either side, and what we're forgetting is that our neighbors, everyone around us, probably doesn't think too far from the way we all think. No matter which side you're on, we're all kind of just hanging out a little bit in that middle common sense area. And yet all we get is the headlines of the absolute, you know, extreme sides of either way. And we think that the entire party is thinking that way. And that's not the case on either side. And so a lot of it just comes down to communication. And the America I miss is what you were talking about. It doesn't matter which generation, but I still remember my family being able to sit there with people, best friends of ours, who didn't agree politically at all, and yet they still clinked a beer together. They still had the conversation, and they still walked away friends, and it wasn't nearly as cutthroat as it is today. So the message with I Miss America is actually, the first thing that we want to talk about is the website, imissamerica.com. Anybody's listening, if you're wondering kind of where to find all the info, and the video, we have a great video that kind of satirically, in a way, humorously, we can talk more about this in a second, but brings that message you were talking about. Everybody's sitting around the table, having a conversation with different views. But yeah, great video taking care of that. imissamerica.com, along with newsletter we're putting out there and a way to display your support of this movement you're talking about. So that's kind of just the underlying sentiment. Less fighting, more uniting is what we're going for, because we're doing a little bit too much of that fighting domestically. We got so much to worry about internationally, which you were talking about at the top of the hour there. There's too much to worry about overseas. Let's start at home. Let's figure this out and move forward rather than fighting with each other.
Mason Douglas, it says here in something that I'm reading that the campaign for I Miss America, the single and the music video, features comedy legend and former Saturday Night Live star Victoria Jackson. That's pretty cool. Tell us how that collaboration came about.
Oh man, she is just one of my new favorite ladies that I have in my life. She is obviously a legend. Everybody knows her from SNL, but I knew her from the Weird Al Yankovic movie UHF. And so when she signed on, not only was I like, oh my God, it's Victoria from Saturday Night Live, but also she was in UHF and Casual Sex and all these movies that I was kind of growing up on. Don't tell my parents I watched Casual Sex when I was like that in my teens, but hey, I did. But she was in all these great classic movies, and then she came on set and just had everybody cracking up in stitches. And no matter what she's telling you, she'll talk about her battles with cancer. She'll talk about her family, her married life, all this stuff, and you will just be cracking up because she is so dang funny and just has comedy down to a masterful science and craft. But yeah, having her come on, I was just blown away that she would even be part of this project, and it just it was absolute dream come true to have her. We had some improv legends with our specialists, I should say. She was the legend. And we had some improv specialists with Oddity Improv here in Nashville. We had Kelsey and Chris and Jeff all hanging out, bringing their magic to the video as well. We didn't want to be too serious with the video. It's a serious subject. Everybody's putting a serious take on it. We wanted people to be a little bit entertained by the message, but still take away what we were going for. So yeah, we have them all. We're all sitting around the table. We have the woke sister. We have the redneck brother. We have mom trying to keep everybody together, fighting across the table, and just kind of shows how we can all still be Americans, family, sitting at the table. Don't have to agree, but we can still have that meal, still have that conversation.
Well, Mason Douglas, I want to continue to discuss what you're doing with this campaign through your music, and I want to learn a little bit more about how you got into the music business and some of your songwriting credits and a bunch of other stuff. So stick with me. Folks, we're on with Mason Douglas, and we're talking about his I Miss America campaign. It's his new song and video that are out, and the campaign that he's bringing across America to unite and eliminate some of the division that's out there. Stick with us, plus your calls and more coming up. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Bring it on, the American dream. Folks, that's Mason Douglas. I could listen to this stuff all day. Mason Douglas, thank you for being here with us again. And I want to know, how do you get into this, right? You grew up in Nashville and you just said, hey, I'm going to get into country music. How did it work?
Well, actually, I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, as an Air Force brat. So my dad was a F-4 fighter pilot in Vietnam. He was the 357 squadron commander and taught all the pilots how to fly those A-10s, those tank killers that we all recognize there. So that was my lifestyle growing up. I was Air Force fighter pilot mentality in my household every time I came home from school. And but yeah, music kind of took me later on in high school and college. And so I never served in the military, but I find in my songwriting, so much red, white, and blue comes out in my music. And I've had a lot of kind of patriotic songs that have been out there. Had a #1 with Kid Rock and We the People. I had John Schneider, Bo Dukes of Hazzard fame. He cut a couple of my songs, one of which was a military tribute called Buy You a Beer. My first country top 40 was American Beauty. So I'm just finding this thread in there that keeps happening. But it's because that's what I grew up on. That's what I know the best. And it always just spills out of me in my music. So I will take that message over beer drinking and pickup trucks any day, to be honest. But yeah, so yeah, I knew music was what I wanted to do with my life. And so anytime I get the chance to put one of these messages out there, especially this day and age, right now is the time we got to start saying this stuff. It's been a little bit too long of just letting things fly. So a few people have to stand up and at least say something, and rather than stay silent.
Now, Mason Douglas, you, in addition to singing your songs, you write your songs and you have some other collaborators, but you've also collaborated with some songwriting credits. I'm looking here at one of Kid Rock's #1 hits, We the People. How did that come about?
Yeah, man, just got to meet Kid Rock through friends and other collaborators invited me in on the sessions and had a great idea. We started a track, and yeah, we knew Kid Rock knew he wanted something that was just going to smoke the faces off people with something patriotic, but he also had to put his spin on it. I was just, man, I was happy to be in that room with him, hanging out, contributing what I could. And when that song took 4 years to do due to COVID, lack of touring, and just also the political environment. He was waiting for the right time to release that. So we had a little bit of time to piece it together. And when he did, it turned a lot of heads. We started hearing that at political rallies, and it became a sort of protest song that they were playing over their loudspeakers. All these protests. And then to go to his show, and it's the last one he plays during his main set, and to see 20,000 people screaming "We the People" and something he just wrote on an acoustic guitar sitting on the couch one day, it blows my mind. So I've been so fortunate to be part of that whole ride.
Amen to that, brother. It sounds like a really great career, and I wish you the best with this campaign and with everything you've got coming forward. Mason Douglas, let everybody that's listening know how they can keep up to speed with everything you're doing, how they could follow you on social. And, of course, we've already discussed the imissamerica.com website, but let everybody know where to go.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you just search for me, Mason Douglas Music, on any of your search engines, it'll pop up right there at the top. MasonDouglasMusic.com is my website, easy enough. But yeah, hit up imissamerica.com, get on the newsletter, and that video right there, that's the biggest thing. We want to share that. If you love it, if you hate it, go ahead and leave a comment. Let us know either way. That's what we're looking for, is just to get people's eyes on it, get the message resonating. We've had far more people love it than hate it. So share that, check it out, get on that video, comment, and newsletter on imissamerica.com. Those are the biggest things to help get that word out there and keep this movement rolling.
And if people want to check you out live, are there tour dates that are coming up, or should they check the website? What do you recommend?
Yeah, check the website for anything coming up. Usually I'm at an intimate songwriter venues here in Nashville. I've got a 2-year-old, so touring is not something I will be doing in the foreseeable future, but I will be at sporadic dates here and there. And then mainly here in Nashville, there'll be little songwriter shows popping up. But right now, we're banking on digital and social media to get this message out there.
Well, happy to help you get the word out here, Mason Douglas. Godspeed to you, sir. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and I appreciate you staying up late with us.
Rich, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you.
You bet. God bless. Folks, Rich Valdez coming right back. Don't go anywhere. All right, America, welcome back. And there was an article in the Wall Street Journal, and I thought it was interesting. Here's the headline. The cannabis that people are using for anxiety is probably making it worse. Anxious consumers are looking for help, and pot companies have promoted their products as an answer. And they interview a doctor. And basically what she says is that most of my patients, Dr. Beth Salcedo, psychiatrist and medical director at the Ross Center in Washington, D.C., they ask her, is it really working for your patients? And she says, well, of all the patients that I have that are using medical marijuana, all of them are still my patients, and all of them still have anxiety. So her take is that most of them are just getting high, and while they're high, they forget that they're anxious. But the anxiety continues. So it's not really a treatment for it, right? It doesn't really make it go away. It just, they get high. And that's her opinion. So I wanted to get to the bottom of that. And of course, we've got our resident expert that I love having on the show, Dr. Vince Callahan, who he's the author of a lot of really good things. But the book he's got right now is The Neural Classroom, Restoring the Stressed Brain. And he's the founder of the Florida Institute for Neural Discovery, FIND, and they're out of Florida. So you could check them out at FIND-FL.com, findfl.com. Dr. Vince Callahan, welcome back, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. I love being on your show.
I appreciate that. And I think the listeners appreciate your expertise. And when I was reading this, I thought it was fascinating because, sometimes you see stuff and there's people out there like, oh, no, weed's the best thing ever. And then you have others that, like this woman who I think was fair in her assessment. She's probably doing the prescribing for some of this medication, but is herself saying that, in fact, she feels that they remain anxious. And just to give you a little clip of this here, survey last year found that nearly 2/3 of the people said they would prefer to use cannabis rather than pharmaceuticals to treat a medical issue, according to the survey conducted by the Harris Poll on behalf of a cannabis company. Almost 2,000 adults who were at least 21 years old, and among them, 54% said that they had used cannabis. 41% said they'd consumed cannabis to reduce anxiety. Dr. Salcedo says, I have patients who use it every day. They say it really helps. Of course, she goes on to say, my message is that if it were really working for you, you wouldn't be here with me. And I thought that was really well put. What say you, Dr. Callahan?
Well, I agree with what the doc is saying. First of all, it all depends on how much you're using. Treatment for anxiety using cannabis can work if it's done in low doses versus the higher doses, because when you use higher doses, it creates more anxiety. And, the logical question is who would use a low dosage of getting high? So people are, especially on the gummies, they're not doing what's recommended. I have patients who will take 10 gummies at a time just to get high for 4, 5, 6 hours. And then when the high goes away, now you've got the anxiety that comes rushing back, the after emotions of what you've done. So I don't know of anybody that, even with a medical marijuana card, that actually does the prescription, so to speak, of what they should be using, because, hey, if I've got a legal way to get high and I don't have to worry about my problems, why wouldn't I do that? But then when the high goes away, you've still got the same problems and you still got the same anxiety.
Well, that's interesting. So what is the low dose? How does that work? How does something like that work where it's actually effective for someone?
Well, like let's just use the gummies, for instance. Probably, I think the patient I've talked to recently about that, who actually does the 10, the dosage would be 1 or 2, and instead of taking 1 or 2, they'll take 10.
And are those common, like a certain amount of milligrams or a certain percentage of THC content?
Yeah, it's a low percentage of the THC. THC, if you're going to treat anxiety with THC type stuff, essential oils are so much better than actually using marijuana because you don't have all the side effects. When you start using even medical marijuana or the chewables, you start changing personality. You get into paranoia. You get into irritability. You get into lots of things that happen that are there because of the marijuana usage, and you get the dependence on it.
So, let me tell you, and I don't know how this compares, but every now and again, working the hours that I work, I find it challenging. I end at 1 a.m. Eastern time. And like most people, I drink some coffee before work. My work starts at 10 p.m. at night. So the coffee doesn't always wear off right away. So I'm here having a good time talking to everybody all across America. It's a blast. Plus, there's a high that comes with doing a radio show. And once you're done, it's like, okay, what now? Right? So I'm ready to go everywhere at 1 o'clock in the morning, and there's nobody around ever. So I watch TV, I do whatever. Sometimes I curl these 25-pound dumbbells I have, and eventually, on a good night, I'll fall asleep by 2 a.m., once I leave and everything. And on a bad night, 3:30, sometimes closer to 4. So somebody recommended to me to use magnesium gummies. And not somebody, my doctor actually recommended me 500 milligram pills. Then somebody recommended me magnesium gummies. And I got to tell you, those things work really well, magnesium gummies. I feel like it's a big secret that nobody knows about. Have you heard about magnesium gummies for like helping with sleep?
I have, and then there's other natural supplements that have not only melatonin but some vitamin B and some vitamin D in there. And I use one called Put Me to Sleep that I just get at a health store, and that actually begins to calm my brain down at night. And within 30 to 45 minutes, I'm ready to go to sleep, and we'll get 4, 5, 6 hours. Because like you, I'm a night owl. Obviously, I'm up this late talking to you, but I understand the whole wind down thing. But yeah, magnesium is a good natural supplement that is used instead of THC, instead of the medical marijuana. I think it's just too easy to get high these days, and people don't want to deal with their stress, but it causes more stress using the marijuana.
Yeah. Now, this thing you're talking about, Put Me to Sleep, and I don't want you to promote any products that you're not allowed to promote, but just explain it. What's in it?
It's just a mixture of vitamins and melatonin, and it's called Put Me to Sleep. And I don't mind promoting it. It's off the website from Dr. Daniel Amen, BrainMD.com.
I love him. He's terrific. Yeah, he's a really good guy.
He is terrific. So he's got a product called Put Me to Sleep. It actually works. I use it, and it's an amazing product, and it's all natural. And I go right to sleep within 30 to 40 minutes.
That's good to know. I'll definitely pick up some of those. Now, in addition, while we're on that topic, if people are facing similar problems, or whether it's anxiety or having trouble winding down after work, what's your recommendation to people? And not necessarily supplements, just anything, exercises, talking, whatever. I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of different ways, but people are wound pretty tight nowadays, especially with all of what we see with the economy and global affairs and domestic affairs. What do you recommend for people to relax more? Because people are saying they're using marijuana for anxiety. I got 2 doctors now saying it doesn't really help unless you're saying in low doses and still has side effects. So what's the best recommendation to handle anxiety?
Anxiety is based in worry, and it's based in the what-if scenario. So that not knowing what's going to happen, and you get these ruminating thoughts about what if. The more routine that you can put in your life gets rid of the what-ifs, and you don't go down the worry road as much. For sleeping, I recommend to my patients, turn your screens off at least an hour before you're going to go to bed. People try to fall asleep with their screens. It actually does the reverse in your brain. So the most simplistic thing to do is to actually turn your screens off, turn your TV off, and try to go, start winding down and get into a routine. The most important thing you could ever do is get a natural rhythm, that circadian rhythm going, where you are getting to bed around the same time and you're getting up the same time. And the more you do that, you don't need an alarm clock, to be honest. It's pretty amazing how that works.
Yeah, for me, it works like clockwork. As long as I fall asleep around the same time, I wake up around the same time. And and I thrive in routine. I have ADHD, and I don't take any Adderall or anything. None of that stuff ever worked well for me. So for me, routine really, really helps to pretend to be normal. And I swear by routine. I eat the same stuff every day. I have the same coffee. I go to the same place. I'm a real creature of habit in order to maintain that level of normalcy. Otherwise, it's very easy for me to go all over the place. So good advice, Doc.
I'll give you a compliment, if you don't mind.
Sure.
For someone who has ADHD, you've got it going on pretty good, and it sounds like you're extremely healthy. And kudos to you on that.
Well, thank you. It's taken a long time to try to figure this thing out, including getting into radio, because I realized I could not work in a desk job. There was a lot of things like, tell me I have to do a spreadsheet, and I'm getting fired, right? I'm not doing it. It'll never happen. So I've learned in life, and I was like, what kind of work can I do where I don't, I could use my personality and all these ideas and the speed of my brain where I can still thrive without, having to type something or do this or do that. And we landed in this place called radio, and thank God for it. It's an amazing thing. So thank you for your kind words. And I'm going to take a quick pause here. We're coming right back with Dr. Vince Callahan. and we're discussing the effects of marijuana and on anxiety. It doesn't seem to be working. Plus, your calls and more. If you want to weigh in on the conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We're on with Dr. Vince Callahan. He's the founder of FIND, Florida Institute for Neural Discovery, their website, find-fl.com. And Dr. Callahan's great because he knows a lot about a lot of stuff. Really, really smart guy. And he's got a brand new book that you got to check out. It's called The Neural Classroom. And we talked a little bit about this last time, and I was fascinated by this concept. I'm oftentimes fascinated by psychological concepts, but the neural classroom, restoring the stressed brain. And the last time we were together, we talked about the stressed brain and how it mimics other things, like in particular, some of the symptoms of ADHD, but how the brains are actually different. The stressed brain can be fixed. The ADHD brain can't. and you can manage things, but they're two different things, and the approach to them is interesting. And I find this interesting because I didn't get my ADHD diagnosis until I was in my 30s, and it was because life was just absolutely insane. And I read an article, believe it or not, and I said, wow, I go through that. And I tracked down the doctor in the article, and I was like, I want to talk to you. And he said, I don't see patients privately. But he said, but my colleague here at NYU Medical School, they both taught at NYU Medical, he said he still does have some private practice, and I don't know if he takes new clients or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I talked to the guy. I went, had an evaluation with the top guy there, and he said, man, in 38 years of teaching this stuff in medical school, you're like the most classic case I've ever seen, at which time they put me on 4 different stimulants, not at the same time. I tried out 4 different ones. I didn't tolerate any of them. And then I tried the non-stimulant, which worked, but it worked for a little while. Then it didn't work. And being normal, like, not shaking my leg, not having to get up, not having to, do what ADHD people do, was cool for a little while. But it was also odd. It was very odd to be able to sit through a very boring, long meeting without getting distracted. And it wasn't a relief. And then I read another article by the CEO of JetBlue. And he said that he would never have found the success that he found becoming CEO of JetBlue if he didn't have the creativity that came with having ADHD. And I said, I'm going to try and go cold turkey here. And that was like 2011. And ever since, I've been flying high off my own crazy and no stimulants. So, Dr. Vince Callahan, what's your approach when you're dealing with folks with ADHD? Because it's a very complex and still growing field, if I'm not mistaken.
And one of the things that I deal with, especially with kids, is the whole feeling that they don't fit in.
Sure.
They're not like everybody else. They're abnormal, so to speak. And so one of the things that folks with ADD deal with is low self-esteem because they're not like everybody else. And I work with them in that area. And if you look at how the brain is different, their brain is processing information so fast. They have short-term memory issues because the information's not getting in. And I just work with them, piece by piece to kind of pull apart, well, here's what's happening and here's what you're doing and here's what a non-ADD, I never use the word normal versus abnormal, but here's what a non-ADD brain does versus an ADD brain. Here's why yours is unique and different, and here's why you are unique and different, and really focus on those strengths versus, you just don't fit in and you're not like everybody else. But you weren't created that way. And the new term is neurodivergent. Everybody's using that term to mean everything that's not quite the norm, if you will. But typically, a lot of people in their 30s start to diminish some of the symptoms. Their brain kind of catches up, if you will. ADD folks are about 30% behind the developmental benchmarks. And when you realize that, In other words, if I'm 12, I'm dealing with a 9-year-old. I'm not dealing with a 12-year-old. So if you know the 30% rule, then that teaches you how you can relate to and deal with that person more so than if not. And it's just a matter of understanding, especially from parents and teachers. And I try and teach teachers really how to look at that brain and look at how it does things differently.
Dr. Vince Callahan's the author of The Neural Classroom, Restoring the Stressed Brain. I recommend getting a copy for yourself and one to give to somebody. This is stuff you need to know because more and more people have this than you think, both the stressed brain and ADHD, which I've become a passive activist for because it's just such an interesting and complex situation. Folks, stick with me. We're coming right back with Dr. Vince Callahan.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back, amigos. And there's a lot of night owls that listen to this program. Some of you are superintendents of schools. Some of you are on school boards. I know that because I've spoken with you when you've called in and people that I meet in my day-to-day that listen to the show. And Dr. Vince Callahan, he is an adjunct professor. He trains teachers and others. And if you're a church leader or community leader and looking for a workshop, this is your man, Dr. Vince Callahan. And in addition to that, he's got this amazing book, and you've got to go, and I recommend always get 2 copies. It's worth it. You can keep one, and you can give one to somebody that can benefit from it. The book is called The Neural Classroom, Restoring the Stressed Brain. And this topic of the stressed brain is something that you need to know about because it can be reversed, and Dr. Vince Callahan spells it out wonderfully in his book. Dr. Vince Callahan, let everybody know how they can get a copy of the book and follow the terrific work that you do.
Sure. The book is on Amazon. If you just type in Dr. Vince Callahan on Amazon, the book comes up first on the list there, both Kindle or paperback, either one that you want to do. Our website, we've got lots of interviews and podcasts and resources. Again, you can also type in drvincecallahan.com. It'll take you to that same Find website. And I just appreciate being on your show, and thank you for promoting. And I love talking to you, and I just really appreciate it.
You got it, brother. We'll have you back on again soon. Help push the book. God bless. And we're coming right back, folks. Open Phone America with me, Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the program Friday night, and the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. If you want to join us, this is your chance. We call it Open Phone America, and of course, that's inherited from Larry King and the late, great Jim Bohannon. And it's your opportunity to weigh in on whatever topic you like, make a statement, ask a question. Honestly, one of my favorite parts of this program, because I love talking to people from really all across the country and learning different perspectives from people. So looking forward to speaking with you or chatting with you after the show when I take a look at my social media. But a few things that are going down in America today, and if it happened in America during the daytime, of course, we talk about it here at night. And, of course, Netanyahu blasted the Biden administration after a visit from Secretary of State Blinken. Blinken was on deck saying that we need to, of course, have a pause, right? We have to have a pause. And he also said from Tel Aviv that the only path is a two-state solution. I think that this has been proven to be impossible when one of those states wants to eliminate the other state. It's laughable, honestly. But Blinken bringing in some hard rhetoric tonight. He says, the way that Israel defends itself matters. He also said we need to increase the sustained flow of humanitarian assistance in Gaza. There's some drama around that, saying they're trying to sneak out wounded terrorists along with regular civilians. It's a crazy situation. And, of course, he says that Israel cannot resume control and responsibility for Gaza. I don't think Israel wants that. I haven't heard Israel say that they want to control and be responsible for Gaza. I said, if I'm not mistaken, I think they've said they want to eradicate Hamas. The Palestinian Authority can do what they've got to do, and, of course, just keep doing what they do. But my question from earlier remains. If Hamas is the political party in charge in Gaza, why is it that they look to Israel for power, for water, and for everything else that they say, they turned off our power? Why are you getting power and water from them? I mean, if you're Hamas and you're so fantastic and you took control in 2005, that's literally when my daughter was born. It was a long time ago. Then why on earth have you not provided for your citizens? And, of course, the question would be, why do they keep electing you? They don't keep electing anybody. They had one election, and it was in 2005. So, yeah, I don't really want to hear it, honestly, from everybody that's pro-Hamas that's out there today and wants to fight with me. I mean, if you want to, go right ahead, call, and we'll have the conversation. But I don't think you got a leg to stand on this one. This is just stupid, right? They just need to be eradicated, and that's that, in my opinion. But I want you to hear Secretary of State Blinken saying the only path forward is a two-state solution. Listen to this, clip number 1.
The United States continues to believe that the best viable path, indeed the only path, is through a two-state solution. That's the only guarantor of a secure Jewish and democratic Israel, the only guarantor of Palestinians realizing their legitimate right to live in a state of their own, enjoying equal measures of security, freedom, opportunity, and dignity. The only way to end a cycle of violence once and for all.
So there we go. We have the Secretary of State of the United States, making these policy decisions, or at least making his recommendations. And I think we've had this discussion. I mean, I don't know, really. If you're listening and you want to correct the record, I'm no expert on this. But haven't you heard about this two-state solution for as long as I've been observing politics for the last 20 years or so? Why on earth do we keep talking about this if it's not the way forward? I mean, we could try to say it's the way forward, but they can't agree on anything. And it's mainly the other side that can't agree, right? It's Hamas. They're like, no, we can't do this. No, we want to go from the river to the sea, right? So get rid of Israel, and then we can have a two-state solution. Two-state solution with one state, us. It's not going to work, right? It's just not going to work. Anyway, that's that piece. Now, you've also got Egypt allowing some civilians out of Gaza, including 400 Americans. Simultaneous report from the New York Post on that saying that they are smuggling out wounded Hamas terrorists with some of these civilians. And that's kind of the formula they're using. Like, for every 10 of these, we're letting, X amount of our guys come out. And this is why Biden is calling for a pause or a ceasefire to have Netanyahu stop his campaign to destroy Hamas. And I can't imagine, I guess, look, I can understand it to the point that they don't want people to get caught in crossfire and this and that. But at the end of the day, I think you do have to realize these people were attacked. This is not a war that they were looking for. This is a war that was brought to them when 1,400 civilians were murdered and little children were abducted and old women were abducted. I mean, nobody does war like this. I mean, these things may have happened in some isolated incidents in different wars. I get that. There's always people that screw things up. This entire war by Hamas, this entire attack, was in itself a war crime. It just was. Burning little kids, burning villages, and stealing old ladies. These are not political prisoners of war, rather. These are civilians. That's not how that works. But this is what's going on. The stuff on the college campuses continues. You've got a Cornell University now canceling classes after a student was arrested for making threats against who? The Jewish students. I mean, it's like open season on the Jews right now. Not cool in any way, but that's what's going on. Yesterday, I reminded you that Sam Bankman-Fried was found guilty in the trial over FTX. And it's just, it really is just, in my opinion, a very bad situation. So anyway, I want to continue here. I want to continue with your calls and more. Let's see what we got here. We've got Idaho, Michigan, Montana, Ohio, and the lines continue to ring. The phone number, 833-482-5337. Let me see here. Let's go with Paul, Boise, Idaho, KBOI. Go right ahead.
Thanks for taking my call, Rich. That was a good intro. A lot of good information and all around.
Thank you.
I think one of the main questions that came up in my head today was just exactly how many Palestinians in World War II were gassed and then burned alive at Auschwitz. I think everybody knows the answer, that there was over 2 million Jews that happened to. And if you're going to find sympathy for some kind of people that have been treated the way they treated, they should get some kind of empathy and sympathy and the ability to defend themselves and the way they see fit necessary. Now, what you described was about the people that died on the 7th. That was not Geneva Convention war rules.
Nope.
Not even close.
You're right. And I think that's part of the issue, right? Part of the issue is everybody's saying, oh, but you can't do this and you can't do that. Listen, I don't know. I don't know how many ways to say this. I'm a little bit out of a loss here. I'm at a loss because I feel like what kind of Kool-Aid does one drink that when someone does something like this to you, to your country, that you're supposed to sit there and give them the white glove treatment? And somehow there's such an incredible focus on civilians. And listen, I'm not saying we shouldn't look at civilians. I'm just saying I've been around for a few different wars, and I'm a young guy, 45 years old. So I think the first war that I saw on television was Iraq, Afghanistan. You see some, videos from other things, Afghanistan that never ended until the other day, and a couple of other incursions we've had that were like kind of dust-ups. And there was the Abu Ghraib disaster. Okay, got it. Seen all this stuff. Haven't seen much, but I've seen what I've seen. I've never, ever heard, we had these bunker buster bombs that were trying to get inside of caves in Afghanistan. Not once were they saying, well, the Taliban has, the women and the children of the Taliban, we have to make sure. That's understood that when you're in a war, you're fighting against the militant, right? You're fighting against the soldiers of the other country, the other team, the other people, like Biden says, the other team, right? So, I mean, these are always things that go without saying, but all of a sudden now it's like, well, half of Gaza are under the age of 18. Oh, holy crap. Okay, great. So half are under 18. Were they thinking of that when they went and they torched these people's homes, burned small children? I don't understand. I just, there's an old saying on the street, don't start none and there won't be none. Well, they started some. So there's going to be a whole lot of smoke here, right? Obviously, there's going to be a lot of smoke. And this is, I'm not calling for the death of anybody. Israel waited, 10 or 12 days before they moved in to make the announcements and said, hey, get out, get out, get out. There's no water. There's no power. Get out. Now, I understand some people want to go down with the ship, just like when they say there's a hurricane coming and this is coming and that's coming and you've got to evacuate. And some people say, no, screw that. I'm going down with the ship. I'm staying here. It's my house. That's your prerogative. But you know what you're doing. You know the choice you're making. And to me, it's crazy that we continue to have these conversations that are just so sympathetic to things that we've never looked at before. Now, you could make the argument and say, well, Rich, just because we never looked at it doesn't mean we should never look at it. Okay, I'll bite on that. Why not? So we're going to redefine the rules of war now, that when you're attacked by terrorists that go and hide in hospitals, that all of a sudden we have to make sure we take everything into consideration. You know what? Given the fact, Mr. Hamas, that your team, as Biden says, killed all these people, but because so many of their civilians are under the age of 18, we think that you probably shouldn't fight back. You know, or when the other day somebody called and said, oh, they killed 1,400 Jews and now there's over 8,000 dead on the Hamas side. When is enough enough? I think the mission is clear. Eradicate Hamas, right? ISIS was blowing things up all over the place. They were bombing things in Europe. They were bombing things in the Middle East. They were bombing things trying to bomb things in the United States. All sorts of different attacks, truck attacks, knife attacks. They were going wild. What happened? They killed them from the top down. You kill the leaders and you keep going, right? The fish rots from the head. And guess what? ISIS may still be around, but they're recruiting. They're weakened to the point where they're not causing the damage that they were causing. That's what has to happen to Hamas. Punto y final, period, the end. I can't think of another way to say that. Paul, excellent point about who the victims were and on the history of these victims. I salute you, sir. Paul in Boise, Idaho, KBOI. Folks, we come back with the rest of your calls and more straight ahead. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
My hands across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, familia, welcome back, America. Listen to this. So there's a janitor in New Jersey, school janitor, elementary school janitor, accused of contaminating food and utensils with bleach and bodily fluids. Yep, that's real. And if I said it wrong, fluids, not foods, bodily fluids. Listen to this. This janitor in New Jersey is facing a list of charges, including child endangerment, for allegedly contaminating food and utensils with both bleach and bodily fluids. 25-year-old Giovanni Impellizzeri of Vineland, New Jersey, is also charged with aggravated assault and tampering with food. Impellizzeri was employed by the Elizabeth Moore School in Upper Deerfield School District. According to the Cumberland County Prosecutor's Office, the state police were contacted by school authorities on Monday after receiving tips about social media posts that allegedly depicted Impellizzeri from performing sex acts with what are described as inanimate objects at the school. Listen to that headline again, or this sentence. The prosecutor's office was contacted by the state police when school authorities received tips about social media posts that showed this guy putting utensils and other items in his body and putting his bodily fluids on these objects at the school. So the school didn't catch him. The people caught him because he was putting it online. How sick is this? The investigation revealed Impellizzeri allegedly contaminated food products and utensils with saliva, urine, and feces. In one incident, police say Impellizzeri sprayed bleach into a container of cucumbers with the intent of harming children. Or maybe he was trying to clean them after he tried to sit on them. What a sicko. In another incident, police say that Pellizzeri touched his private areas with bread, spit on the bread, then put the bread back into a container to be served to the children. What a whack job. This is a public health crisis at this point. We don't know where he's been, said Rachel Jenkins. Kids are getting sick, having diarrhea, vomiting, and we're blaming it on a belly bug when in reality it could be hepatitis, it could be food poisoning, said Christencia Jenkins, who was a parent, and she says, like, who knows what else he's putting in there? Yeah, I agree with her. Prosecutors say Pellizzeri did all of this while employed by the school where he has worked since September of 2019. Investigators say they're trying to determine exactly when the alleged acts occurred. As disgusted as parents are about the accusations, they're also upset with the school. Well, no kidding. This is insanity. I'm going to continue with this straight ahead. I want to get your thoughts and opinions on this as well. 833-482-5337. Parents don't pay a ton of money in taxes, especially in New Jersey, just to have this happen, to have their kids endangered by the people that work in the school. Not acceptable. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez, coming right back.
Well, Mr. Valdez, you have one of the greatest shows that radio's ever had.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, folks. So, yes, I'm disgusted by this story. I really am. This janitor in a school, 25-year-old guy whose name I can barely pronounce, Pellizzeri is his name. Let me just make sure I got it right here. Mr. Giovanni Pellizzeri, Vineland, New Jersey, charged with aggravated assault, tampering with food, child endangerment, contaminating utensils with bleach and bodily fluids. This guy was all over the place, putting things in his butt, serving this food to the children. He's a janitor. He's not even a food worker there. Absolutely insane. How'd they catch him? He put it on social media. Somebody saw it, reported it to the school. Parents found out. The school sends a robocall saying, hey, look, this guy's been let go. He's been suspended. Meanwhile, kids are getting sick. They're having diarrhea. They're vomiting, and they're blaming it on a stomach bug when in reality it could be hepatitis. It could be food poisoning, and amongst other things. And that's one parent saying that. Her name is Christencia Jenkins. You've got other parents saying lots of different things. According to the prosecutor's office, the school learned of the accusations on Monday and contacted the police. Pellizzeri was arrested on Tuesday. Parents say they didn't hear from the school until Wednesday when they got a robocall from the school saying an employee was on leave. How's that? Listen, if I am a principal of a school, I understand. Look, I've been a school board member for a number of years. You have to take this seriously, and you have to protect these kids. People are entrusting their kid to you, and you have to take the job seriously. I mean, there really is no other way to do this. If something goes down in your school, you have to put your big boy pants on, your big girl pants on, and say, hi, something bad happened, and we want you to know what happened. Of course, you don't want to scare parents, but guess what? Something crazy is happening. You got to let them know the truth. The district didn't contact the health department until Thursday. So, again, I would ask, why wouldn't you have called the health department on Tuesday or on Monday when you found out, when you called the cops? I mean, why not do everything, especially if kids are getting sick? It also sent parents a text asking for tips and saying that no students were involved. Now, they don't know that yet. There's an investigation going on. So why make this declaratory statement saying no students were involved? Because you want to allay the fears of the parents. I get that. But you don't put your need, desire, will to absolve yourself from anything and put all the blame on this guy when this is clearly a problem, right? So if there's bodily fluids, one parent said this, if there's bodily fluids and all this other stuff going around, that is direct involvement. The superintendent addressed some parents Friday in the parking lot who came to pick up their kids. A second call was made to parents on Friday saying, in part, I want to start by saying I understand how difficult this situation is for everyone involved. I'm just going to stop him right there and say, Mr. Superintendent, Madam Superintendent, if you don't have a kid in that school that ate a piece of bread or a cucumber that was in this man's rectum or whatever else happened in this place, then you can't say that. You have to say, I can't even imagine how difficult this is for you to go through, because you don't know, because your kid may not be getting sick. You have to use some sense here. Anyway, it says, we're here for you, and we will provide support if students or staff have questions. Yeah, everybody's going to have a damn question, sir. You have to keep providing answers. You need to get in front of this thing, not get behind it. The school administrators that do this stuff, they really, really piss me off, because there is a responsibility, and this is the responsibility, keeping the kids safe. You can't just be like, hey, listen, I'm a really high-paid administrator, and I'm just here to tell you all these people broke the rules, but it's okay. We're going to get to the bottom of it. No, you've got to let them know what we're doing different. How are we going to prevent this from happening again? I understand it's ongoing. You've got to get tough. You've got to get tough and stick up for little kids. Anyway, it says parents have now started a petition for the superintendent to be fired. No duh. He's lucky some hot-headed dad didn't come and pay him a personal visit with a knuckle sandwich. This is real life. Tell me, most people don't want to fight in life. But if someone, and I understand, we have to be reasonable. This guy didn't do something directly to their kid, but this is on his watch. He's got to assume the responsibility and say, look, the buck stops with me, and I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen again. Something happened to your kid, we're getting to the bottom of it. Nothing happened to the kids. Nobody even knows if that happened yet. This thing's been being investigated since Monday. You just got to tell them the facts that you know and move forward. Anyway, the district has not responded to multiple requests from comments from Channel 6 News out of Philly. They should answer some questions. They should be very forthright and very open. You know, I mean, I understand when the cops do these active shooter things and they don't know how many people are killed and they haven't told the family, they say, look, I can't answer that right now. That's a different story. Right now, these are little kids that are alive and could be sick. You've got to say, look, here's what we know right now, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. And yes, your concerns are all valid. There's nothing that any parent's going to say there that's wrong. If they're mad and they're telling you to go after yourself, yes, thank you. Thank you, may I have another? My bad, and I'm working on it. You have to become the parent's ally, not their obstacle. Anyway, and not their adversary for sure. Officials say the school district is working with the Department of Health to ensure utensils, food prep areas, and surfaces have been sanitized, and the food in question has been discarded. All the food has to be discarded. You don't know what's going on. That's the point. And that's the type of stuff, the action you have to take and say, look, we're not going to start picking and choosing here and leave something on the table. We're getting rid of everything. We're doing a complete overhaul of this. We're bringing in a cleanup team. You know, let people know you're taking this stuff seriously. I'd like to see guys with hazmat suits there, bleaching everything and making sure that these kids are going to be okay. Spare no expense. Do what you got to do. The prosecutor's office says it's also collecting samples from Impella's area to see if any diseases could have been transmitted. Well, thank God. Somebody's thinking. Once this has been determined, prosecutors say the next steps will be to provide the health department with that information. For now, here's a quote, for now, parents and students and others who may have consumed contaminated food should contact their healthcare provider if they show signs of illness, particularly severe illness, according to the health department in a statement. Yeah, well, you know why? The health department is doing the right thing here. They had nothing to do with this, right? The health department, they're just saying, hey, look, take your kid to the doctor if they're sick. Why didn't the superintendent say that? Why'd they send out a robocall saying, oh, no kids were affected? Come on, what kind of pendejo is this guy? Unbelievable. Anyway, let's go to one call before we take a pause. Sarah, Bedford, Indiana, WBIW. Go right ahead.
Hey, this makes me sick. I work as a janitor at a school, and it makes me really
I know
sick.
you do, and you do the night shift, and you do an amazing job, and this has got to disgust you the way it disgusts me.
Well, you know, does the guy not have if he's that crazy. Surely he's got a criminal record. I mean, you're supposed to go through a background check. Even parents who chaperone kids on bus trips or stuff have to go through a background check. Did he not really have, does he not have a past? Secondly, he probably did work second shift because he's probably got keys to everything. So if you want to go forward, you'll have to limit the access and change the key cores. But the thing is, if they do that to where the night shift can't get into the kitchen, that's fine. But someone needs to walk through that kitchen and make sure no one's left ovens on, because believe it or not, I have had to shut stuff off that was left on or doors unlocked. You know what I mean? So somebody, if they want, and I'm telling you what, if they catch this guy and he's guilty, they need to burn him at the stake or hang him. Some kind of example, like if you're a pervert, you stay away from our kids and don't do this because you'll be burned alive like that guy was. I got no sympathy, and they need to have a real justice that would scare the rest of them from even thinking of working at a school.
I'm with you, Sarah. Years ago when I became a school board member, I had to get fingerprinted, background checked, and in order to get certified by the state of New Jersey as a school board member. And I have zero or very minimal contact with any students. I go to meetings that are once the school is closed, and on occasion, if they want to bring the board to an event that the school's doing, like Read Across America, Dr. Seuss, I've had the privilege of reading to the little scholars in their classroom and whatnot. But those are very, twice in the last 8 or 9, 10 years. So I agree with you. We need to know who. I don't know if he was vetted and he passed it because he's just a sexual deviant with a mental illness and decided to do this stuff, and now is the first time he's getting caught. But this is what these investigations will reveal. I'm particularly disappointed. Yeah, again, if you're on a cruise ship, separate analogy. If you're on a cruise ship and one of the food service workers or one of the maintenance staff or whatever it is decides to do this same type of thing, contaminating food and doing whatever, how do you think the captain of the ship is going to handle that? Right? They'll probably keep it in-house and keep it tight. But if people are getting sick, they're going to have to come forward and say, attention passengers, my bad. We've had an incident where there was some stuff and, we're at sea and we can't, we're trying to determine the food that was affected. We're going to get rid of all of it and we're going to do what we can. They have to take responsibility. Imagine the liability if they go, oh, no, nothing happened. And people start getting sick and the story comes out later because somebody finds out on social media. They would be caught with their pants down. So the school district has to do the right thing here. And the superintendent, I don't know who he or she is, but we definitely have to find out and maybe invite him on the show and find out what's going on with this response and give them a chance to share their side. But right now, this doesn't seem good. And again, it's a middle school. So what's the oldest kid might be 12 years old in the middle school? This is a horrible story. And it's an elementary school, so it's not even a middle school. You're talking about there's kindergarten, there's first graders, second graders, third graders. These are small children. They get sick just being small children, let alone being in contact with this man's orifices. Absolutely disgusting. Anyway, getting to your calls and more, we got calls from Maine, from Oregon, from Ohio, Montana, Michigan, Wisconsin, and more. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And we've talked about the 2024 election. We've talked about the effects of marijuana potentially not working for the cessation of anxiety. We've talked about all sorts of mental issues, and I want to get your opinions on lots of things, especially with global affairs as well. Let's go to Paul, Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ. Paul, go right ahead.
Hey, good evening, Rich. As far as that guy, that janitor or whatever, that's beyond disgusting. That's just sick. And also, I would like to bring up that, okay, wait a minute. I got it right here. Hold on a minute, Rich. with Hamas. Yeah, Hamas. They're just terrorists. Okay, they're just terrorists, and it's plain simple. If they have to flood the tunnels over there, go ahead and flood them. You brought that to my attention. I didn't know they had those tunnels over there. But you got to do what you got to do over there, in my opinion. And then I wanted to talk about this thing called sundowning. Have you heard of it? We were talking about the brain.
I know all about it. Let me tell you just briefly my experience with it. My dad had a brain injury that prompted something called a traumatic brain injury, a TBI, and they called it TBI-related dementia. And it was like everybody else's dementia, but it was brought on by a traumatic brain injury. And he would sundown every day around the same time, whenever the sun went down, and it was a really rough experience. He would go from just not being 100% to being like 50%. And, you know, like, what's going on? Why are you in my house? Who are you? He would become agitated. He'd become paranoid. Dad was a tough guy with big rock solid hands. And he would fight, flight, or freeze. He never froze, and he didn't flee, right? So it was always fight for him. And it's a very difficult thing, but some people experience emotional breakdowns. They cry. It's a very heartbreaking thing if you love the person that's having sundown syndrome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've waited about 20 minutes or 25 minutes or so, but that's a good thing because people are calling Rich Valdez, and you're doing a great job. So that sundowning, my wife has it real bad too, and she gets depressed and everything. Yeah, but it's okay because I've been with her for a long time, but I know how to handle it. But now she also has COVID. She got it about 5 days ago. So we're going through that and everything. But as far as the Hamas, they're terrible. That guy that you was talking about, he's just a sicko. They ought to fire him immediately. I hope they did. I was a sub too, just like Sarah there. She's a full-time, I think, but I was a sub for 16 months. I would never, ever think of doing something like that. That's just crazy. They ought to lock the guy up.
I agree with you, Paul, 100%. You're right, spot on, and my prayers are with you in dealing with your wife. I know that's tough to deal with. Godspeed to you, my friend. Let's see. We pause right here. We come back with the speed round, and the rest of your calls. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, we go to the phone. Speed round. Keep it really brief. Get straight to the point so we can get everybody in. Let's go to Linda, Kalamazoo, Michigan, listening online to KDKA. Go right ahead, Linda.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask originally a question. Is the supplements that he was talking about, Dr. Callahan was talking about, I wondered if he thought that they were better with or without the traditional meds, but obviously I couldn't ask him that. As far as the other stuff with that janitor, yeah, he needs to go, and maybe he needs to see Callahan.
I think you're right, Linda. Yeah, and what he was talking about was something called Put Me to Sleep. Those are gummies sold by Dr. Daniel Amen, and he's a terrific psychiatrist, Dr. Amen, and a terrific psychologist, Dr. Callahan. I appreciate it, and I think you're right. We got to lock him up and send this guy to one of these shrinks because this guy's nuts. Let's continue with the calls here. Let's go to Allison, Portland, Maine, WLOB. Quickly, go right ahead.
I know I don't have much time, but last time I tried to talk about this, you were kind of mad with me.
I didn't get mad.
Over 9,000 Palestinians have been killed, and a lot of them are civilians, including a few thousand children. And it's not just one-sided. The way that the Israelis are acting towards them, and I know they were horribly persecuted a long time ago, Jews, but the Palestinians have been persecuted for many, many years too because they were driven out of their homeland, and now they're being wiped out and Gaza's being leveled. And I do not think this is fair and equitable by any means. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. I appreciate that. I haven't heard that these statistics that you're talking about. From what I understand, they're doing a door-to-door raid on buildings that they believe where the terrorists are. And I do, of course, understand that there may be mistakes that are made and whatnot. But from what I understand, they're getting the right people. If I'm wrong, I'm happy to correct the record and join you in that opinion. I think they got to get the bad guys, but at the same time, you've got to get people out of there. And when you turn off the water, you turn off the power, and you make 1,000,003 announcements saying, get out of Dodge because we're coming in with a wrecking ball, we've got to get people out of there. And I'm not going to blame Netanyahu for not getting people out of there because those aren't his people. I'm going to blame Hamas, the people that claim to be defending these people, and they're not doing a great job defending anybody. So shame on them. The blood is on their hands. Let us continue. Thank you, Allison. I appreciate it. Where do we go from here? Dan, West Salem, Wisconsin, WIZM. Go right ahead.
Thank you much, Rich. Like you, I share ADD. They put me in special ed in the third grade because I tend to talk all the time and disturb the kids. And I used to get in trouble with the other kids in my neighborhood for talking, and I'd talk myself into trouble. And then I found I'd take a little marijuana joint, and I'd go down to a local creek, and I'd sit there and listen to the babbling brook. I'd smoke the doobie, and I'd hum to myself for about an hour and a half until I felt calm and relaxed and stable and grounded, and I'd go back, and everything was good. And that's the contrast between pot being good for some people and bad for others. The left brain, critical thinking people who have to have all their words spelled right and grammar good, or they're going to comment on YouTube to point that out. That's not good for them because they don't live in the right brain. They're not creative and daydreaming and going into fantasy land. They have to stay in their fear-based critical thinking. So as Louis Armstrong said, it makes the music better because he could visualize, he could be creative. And pot is for the artist in us.
Well, you know, I agree with that to a point. I don't use marijuana, but I will say I definitely am creative. And I'm sure that the effects of some old school grass would help back in the days. But the stuff that's out there now, I don't know if it's the same. And these doctors agree it's not working out. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless. I'm Rich Valdez.